understandable,
Hang on,
completely
I'm trying
understandable.
to find. I'm just trying to find the list here again. What was asked for?
Here, I actually just, 10 minutes ago sent the agenda. Well, actually, what we can do our,
Can you unpack what you're trying to get to based on the last data that was shared?
yeah, let's
Why
take a
don't,
look at,
can we look at the Google sheet that Dr. Robinson had created and we could kind of get an idea from there?
Um, does anybody know what it was titled?
that's a good question.
I don't know if it was shared or if it was within the meeting.
It was just sent out,
Sent out this morning, wasn't it?
sent it out this morning. She updated the minutes and sent it out this morning.
So I have the minutes when I can share that. Um,
That was just emailed everybody at about 10 till 9, the updated minutes that had all the data requests. So, what we had done, because I think Keith, you weren't here for the last meeting, if I recall correctly.
minute, like right at the end.
Right. So basically, what we're trying to do is we realized, looking at the data, that it was just way too much. So we said, rather than trying to look at all the data, let's just drill down into fourth grade ELA, because that's, I think a pretty significant grade level and where we could get some interesting information. So then what we're looking at is for the students that made progress, like going up more than one level, we're looking at the teacher data, which would be, like their years of experience, whether they're nationally board certified, whether they have a reading endorsement. And then this was a big discussion last time about how they arrived, we showed it, how they arrived at the school.
Yeah, I don't know if we're gonna have that kind of. Yeah, that's gonna teacher all this kind of data that's very teacher specific. That is gonna take some time. See, again, Miss Simmons not here. Where she left off of this, because that's gonna be an HR function, not a research.
Right.
And I'm not sure. I mean, there's been plenty of studies also done on as far as reading endorsement and national board certification, and that having an impact that it's going to be mixed. It's going to follow all other data points that you'll have some that do well, some that don't, and that it's not like a difference maker.
Right.
I think that it's also important to get to add the total number of students too. That was a data point that was missing.
Total number of students, meaning
Like so that we could compare those that make progress, that move from level 1 to let's say level 2 or 3, overall the entire population of the fourth grade, right?
okay. Dr. Robinson, what? Research.
So you made reference to research that shows that the board certification is not, I don't know what words you use, not that significant in terms of improving outcomes. I mean, I would like to see that research. I mean, I intuitively believe that, but everybody else acts like the board certification is like the thing that will improve lives forever or something.
Yep. Okay.
that would really be, that would be good, because if it's something that has been shown to not be that significant, then we can just take it out of the equation, because unless we have any reason to think that Palm Beach County would be different than what other data has shown.
The IES
Okay.
looked at it. I'll put this one in the chat.
Is this a raising hands meeting?
No, there's only 4 of us.
Okay.
Just talk.
So I think that whether or not the teacher is board certified should be relatively easy data to pull. So I wouldn't say remove it, because there's some people who will be like, basically they're not going to believe, like, so we can show if it's not hard to get the data, maybe it's worth getting. I don't know. I need more coffee. I'll make more sense shortly.
It may be a question that other people that look at the data will ask, hey, well, all these teachers, all these teacher examples certified? For whatever reason, they want to ask the question. If it's a strong coincidence, then yes, we should definitely use the data. Whatever's going to help us reach our the information target that we need.
Right.
It's just going to take time.
In my opinion, the certification, while it is important, it's what you do with the certification.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is it's going to take a lot of staff time to pull all this for all the different schools. So that's a lot of work to drill in. So I need everybody to understand that.
So, yeah, no, I understand, because we don't want to, we all know that everybody has more work than they can ever do on a given day. So I do want to make sure that what we will do with the data will be worth the amount of work. Because I don't want to, just ask for a bunch of data and that sits there and it's not really leading to anything. It was a big waste of time.
Exactly.
But one of the things, like with, this is a pretty big data request. And probably one of the things we can say going forward is that the people looking at it, take the easier, quicker parts and get it to us sooner rather than later. And if there's parts that are going to be a lot of work or need a lot of time, then let us know and we can analyze to make sure that that is truly going to be a worthwhile piece of data. But I think I'd rather have part of what we asked for, instead of waiting for everything, some parts of which might take a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Like that student data by school and teacher, I'm guessing that's a fairly easy one. I'm thinking that's probably all in database, but I don't know. I'm not the data person here or anything, but and maybe like whether or not they're board certified or have a reading endorsement might be easier than how the teacher arrived at the school.
This kind of data here that I have highlighted is stuff that's going to take more time.
Okay. So I think what we probably want going forward
and some of this data here, student data by school and teacher, some of that may be student identifiable when we get less than 10 students, and therefore not necessarily being able to be shared.
Right. Right.
By school, okay, but by teacher.
Right. Although, because we're not asking for identification of the teacher, so.
You're not asking for identification of the teacher?
Like, not by name, I'm saying.
Oh, well, then.
Because I think that, remember, that was a issue originally, which I can understand, that having individual teachers' names. Um, I think we're looking at, like, I'm not quite sure how that would be done, if it's like fourth grade teacher one, Yale teacher one, whatever. Um, but my point being that if we're not identifying the teacher by name, then doesn't matter if it's fewer than 10 students, because,
Yeah, if you're not identifying the name, then that changes it.
okay. The other, and something that just occurred to me now looking at this
But let's say something
is,
positive comes up, or that you want to know who the teacher is, right? And then you have this data, and then
well, I think though, we don't really need to know an individual teacher. What we're really looking for is trends. Like let's just say it turned out that, hey, when they have a reading endorsement, their kids are doing better. Or, if we actually got this of, hey, the people who applied to the school are their students are doing better than the ones who had an involuntary transfer, whatever. Um, it, um, but something else, a little complicating factor, just occurred to me that, um, we have all kinds of interventions as well, mandated, by state law. So, when, like, for example, reading endorsement, well, the teacher may not be reading endorsed, but the person doing the tier 2 or 3 interventions might be reading endorsed. And so, but they're not listed as a teacher of record. Um, and then to make it even more complicated,
yeah, I'm thinking,
um,
Dr. Robinson, you remember the old PYG scatter plot?
Yeah.
Wouldn't that show some of what you're trying to get to, the PYG scatter plots?
no, what's PYG?
Percent yearly growth.
The, the ones that show each quartile and teachers by school? Wouldn't that be
Okay,
a better
right,
way to
right.
illustrate?
Okay, so let's go back to what we challenged ourselves with. So according to my notes, we said, what are the barriers to getting the quote best teachers with the neediest schools or students, right? So I think that the PYG scatter plots would tell us where they are to some extent, but we still not getting into the factors that led them led them to be there. Like most of what we're talking about is where are they on the scale of the best scale, like like on the great teacher scale, right?
Yeah.
Um, and and I think part of that was trying to figure out if there's any, I'm gonna call them proxies, that would predict that this person will be, fit into this category, right? Um, so I think we just need to sort out what we're trying to do now. The other thing is like, so we could go to back to the how they pulled the data for those $10,000 teachers way back when, um, and maybe pull that kind of data and then look at those teachers. So, as I recall, these were teachers whose students um, basically gained more than a year's progress in a year, as I recall,
Yeah, they would be
right?
up in this upper right-hand quartile. So
Right.
this is FY25 by school.
Hmm.
So the schools in the blue had high growth and high performance, being level 3 or above.
Hmm.
The green had high growth, but not necessarily at level 3. The yellow had high performance, they were above a level 3, but they didn't have growth. And then the red was low growth and no performance.
Right, but we would need to look at it as by teachers.
By
You got a
teacher,
scatter
right.
plot for teachers?
Yeah, I think there is. I just gotta,
So before you look, can you put the link for that Power BI in the chat?
yeah, I'm not sure if you'll be able to open it, but maybe. This is a
And then,
year,
you know,
but what,
this is, was gonna say the other thing, I mean, I guess maybe this is useful in the, like, I'm thinking of the other thing we talked about, which is um, the ones who had higher than expected, growth. And I forget what there was a term that you'll have for that, that, um, that
The
I guess,
VAM?
say it again?
The VAM scores?
Yes, yeah, the value added, yeah, the
Mm.
ones whose students scored higher than was predicted or expected, um, because that kind of levels the playing field. Like presumably,
this is similar to a VAM, but it's one the district created and much easier to understand than a VAM formula. So it
right,
has the same
it,
type.
and correct me if I'm wrong, the thing that I would think a VAM would capture that this wouldn't is, um, well, actually, let me ask a question about the VAM. Does VAM always expect a year's growth? Like, is that the minimum of what is expected for a VAM? Because I would think that if you have if you have a sixth grader who's reading at, who's been making, say, 6 months, growth every year, that having expected growth of a year would not be, really realistic necessarily. Um, Although I guess it could go the other way. You say it should be more than a year because they have to catch up. But um, I guess I don't know how VAM. The question is how VAM determines what is the expected growth, and if it's always a minimum of a year.
Yeah, and since I'd have to get schooled on it since we've changed our testing to 3 times a year and how it works versus when it was year to year. I don't know how that formula has changed. So I'd have to bring somebody from research and eval in to unpack what's evolved.
And VAM stands for value added what
Model.
model? Okay.
I'm trying to see if I can find a scatter plot by teacher.
So I wanna go back and clarify. So this scatter plot for on the schools,
Mhm.
so this is just straight, um, yeah, percent level 3, and then the bottom is the PYG, percent yearly growth. And so, I mean, on the, what is that, the y-axis is the percent yearly growth. So the percent yearly growth is a calculation that takes into account um, expectations, like VAM does.
Correct.
Am I correct?
Correct.
Well, no. Well, yes and no. Because if you look at that like let's say that lower right, where
Mm-hmm.
they have a higher growth, that axis there, that's showing that basically anybody who grew more than a year is considered higher growth. And anybody who grew less than a year is considered lower growth. But I don't know that's not necessarily tied at all to expected growth. And that's kind of back to the question I just asked is how in the VAM model, and VAM, how is the
Expected growth,
expected growth
ex-
determined?
expected growth would be the lower right, that you're making at least a year's gain in a year's time,
Right,
but that doesn't necessarily get you, and Dr. Robbins talked about this for years, that doesn't get you necessary to grade level. You could go
Right,
through every
exactly.
year making a year's gain, but never make grade level.
right. Right. I mean, and this is interesting. I think we could all probably, without seeing any schools, take a wild guess that our wealthier schools are in the upper right and our lower socioeconomic schools are in the lower left.
Now, some of the wealthiest schools are going to be in the upper left
You
Upper
could,
left, that,
because
yeah,
they're not growing. They're just, the kids do well, but they're not growing.
right. Well, and it does make sense if, let's say you're a third grader and you're reading at a fifth grade level, it's
Yeah,
how much growth can you make?
exactly.
Hmm.
So, so I should say the ones that are on the top half are probably your um, wealthier
And that's what this
neighborhood.
whole conversation is about, right? So
Yeah,
if we believe in the
exactly.
value of teachers, right? If we think that teachers are critically important to education, then what are the predictors of a teacher who's going to move, this needle? But I think that back to the PYG though, I think the PYG is based on predicted values. So we just need to, for the sake of understanding data when we're looking at it, just have maybe Mr. Oswald, if you can ask Mr. Houchins to answer that and just send it out to us later.
Say that again to answer which,
Is PYG based on expected growth or predicted growth? I think it is. I don't think it's straight a year's growth in a year's time. I think it is what you expect a student with these particular characteristics, what you expect them to do in a year.
so in other words, Deborah, you're saying that down there at the bottom where it says 1.0, that may not represent a year, but it might represent the
It's
expected
the
growth?
expected year's growth.
Oh, okay.
What the I could be wrong.
I think it's
But I'm
actual,
just,
no, it's actual growth.
okay, put
That
as
1.0
how
is,
to
Yeah, I'll
is
ask
a
her.
answer
year.
it in writing.
That's fine.
Yeah, I just clear it up in my little head.
Um, and I think, like actually some of the more interesting schools might be the green, um, with, because chances are they're not a high socioeconomic because they're not where they're supposed to be at the level 3, and yet they're making good growth. One of the things that I think makes this difficult, like we look at some of those, basically the schools above the line, right? Well, I know, just from my own kids' experience and from talking to plenty of people, that there's a large percentage of students in those high performing schools that have private tutors and two English speaking parents and stuff. A lot of factors that have nothing to do with how good the teacher is. But like what we're trying to do here is figure out what in those, beyond those factors, who are those teachers. So, really what we're looking at is those schools below the line, right? And maybe what we should be looking at is what's the difference between the green schools and the red schools?
And are we able to see like which schools are in which area or like which specific school it's indicating?
Yeah, if you hover, can you open it? Did it open for you?
Where'd you put the link?
I think it's in the chat.
The chat.
Yeah,
If you
thank
hover
you.
over, you'll see the school name come up.
Oh, okay. Perfect.
Let's say I want to just go to, I can zero in, like, this is just elementary. I want to go to just middle school. Right now I'm in ELA. I could switch over to math. I could switch to algebra. That's interesting.
That is interesting.
Um,
Yeah.
Back to ELA, I could go by principal supervisor portfolio, or I can drill into an individual school. Let's say Addison Meiser, Acres
Okay.
Pines. I can go one by one. Atlantic High School, Dreyfus, Bach, Banyan, Barton, Beacon Cove, Bear Lakes,
Okay.
Belglade, Belvedere, Benoist, Berkshire, Banks Forest, Blue Lake, Boca.
So, Keith, can I ask you a question here on this scatter plot? So, um, a school, the entire school gets one dot. Um,
I
what
think I'm
is
trying to find
the
out if there's one of these for. I think there's one by teachers too.
That
So,
would be great.
so you drill in. So I would have this for my teachers at my school.
Mhm.
At least we used to. I sent him a chat. I sent him a message to see if he gets back to me. But yeah, you would have it by actual teachers within the school,
Right.
which I think is more
So,
powerful than some of the data you're asking for. 'Cause
right, right, exactly. And so then the question is, for a school's dot, is do you know if this is based on that their little score here, the average? So like I'm looking just like for example, I just clicked on Lincoln Elementary, which is the furthest one on the right of the green. It said a max of 1.41, which looks like
So the
um,
1.41 means the kids average 1 year and 4 months gain.
okay, so that's the average. That's what you're saying
Yeah,
because it says max, but that's max of the average.
yeah.
Okay, okay, great. That's what I want to know. Um,
So the top upper right, Coral Sunset, 1.37. So their kids almost 1 year, 4 months. Versus a school down here, Roosevelt Elementary, kids average just slightly over half a year's growth.
right. So is it possible to get this by teacher?
I'm trying to find out. I sent a chat to Paul.
I mean, because I know the um, I know there's privacy concerns, obviously, about teacher names. So, um,
Yeah, I just want to let's fast forward here and pretend we have everything we need, and we're back to knowing who moves kids, who doesn't move kids. My speculation, it will be a mix, right? You'll have some teachers at some schools that do it, some that don't, some that maybe have endorsements, some that don't, or national board. So I think it has more to do with teacher efficacy and building student efficacy, but as well as their content knowledge, a combination of the two. Let's say we have that. Trying to get certain teachers that are high performing, working with lower performing kids that move kids, you're still down to kind of the age old challenge, at least in the 30 plus years I've been in education, of how do we recruit and get them to go to and work at another school and stay there. Some will do it because they feel it's a moral responsibility and they do it, and then you get the others who, for whatever reasons, working conditions. I could tell you at the high school level, for performance and accelerate coursework is going to be a big distractor at the high school level. That was a big challenge for me at Boynton before it was even bigger money now.
Right. Although, bottom line is, I mean, that is money, right? And I think, I mean, I think you raised a really good point here, Keith, in that fast forward and imagine that we have all this data. Are we addressing the problem that Dr. Robinson just restated what our purpose is what are the barriers to the good teachers being at the schools where they're needed more?
And I know that the data is difficult to get, and we've discussed it, but some of the data that Dr. Robinson had mentioned last time about like how the teachers are getting to each school, this is the point where like that data would be valuable so that we could see, like what is the process? How did that teacher get to that school? It's not necessarily that the teacher is choosing that school.
So Paul just got back to me. He said we do have something by teachers, but it's limited access to individuals, even to principals.
Yeah, that makes sense, actually.
Because it's identifiable at the teacher level.
Right.
So I'm going to have a conversation with him.
I was going to say, maybe, that might be I was just going to say that, with all this discussion that we've been having, maybe really that's not what we need. I mean, like, a good question would be, again, looking at these schools on the scatter plot, comparing, say, how the teachers got to the school from the lower left to the lower right, or, things like that. Because again, I think we'd kind of gone down a little bit of a rabbit hole of trying to determine exactly what certifications or years or whatever made a teacher a good teacher, but that doesn't answer our question. And maybe when we're looking at the school level, of looking at which schools have more involuntary transfers and which schools have just, percentage wise, teachers who are reading endorsed or teachers with how many years of experience. I think that, maybe that would lead us, maybe I'm thinking perhaps closer to the question that we're really trying to answer, which is what are the barriers? Or maybe it's not. Maybe, we've kind of been looking at this all wrong and should kind of go back to what we were looking at originally, which kind of what you're talking about, Keith. Like it's the things like the extra pay for the high level courses. And I know we talked a lot about culture in our first meetings and how the culture affects people's willingness or unwillingness to work at a school. Data is kind of tempting, I think, because it's numbers that we can really glom onto. Something like culture is much harder.
Well, we do have that school culture data, I believe, that was presented to us. And I think that there is some benefit in like, cross-referencing it, possibly seeing like which schools fall on like the lowest left and like see what the school culture is looking at, like in those specific schools. I think that there's value in that.
Right. I mean, yeah, like it would, I totally agree. I think that it'd be really interesting, I think, to look at the school culture data from the lower left and compared overall to the school culture data on the lower right. I do understand it's a little bit of a chicken and the egg. If you're perhaps, maybe not. But I think, I don't know.
Yeah. It was interesting though, as we go through the schools and like, if you go click one by one, what Dr. Dr. Robinson's, I guess, like, thought was is kind of true. If you go look at like those in better areas, they tend to fall on the top half of the graph.
Right. I mean, and I think no matter what we do, there there are factors that are that's always going to be true because there's going to be factors that are beyond the school environment, right? No matter what, if you're sending a kid home to um, parents working three jobs and not being able to read English, it's very different than sending a kid home to, a stay-at-home mom who reads for an hour to her kids. I mean, that's just, a fact of life. I think what we try to do with our schools that are on the lower half is say, what can we do, at the school level to make up for some of the inequities?
Yeah.
Um, which
And see
and
how
it
much
would be
falls onto the teachers.
right, right, exactly. Um, and even how much, like it is really important to think about how we can improve the school culture, um, in spite of the fact that it doesn't, that the teachers don't have a whole classroom full of supportive parents that are volunteering for everything and, donating for everything and all of that, right? So,
And I
you
mean, how
know,
do we increase that parent to school,
right.
collaboration, participation?
Yeah. I mean, it's, I do think there's certainly things that can increase parental involvement. Um, but bottom line is neighborhoods with a lot of stay at home parents are going to be more involved than neighborhoods where everybody's working two or three jobs. Uh,
Good morning,
Gloria,
morning, Ms. Branch.
Hi. I will have to say you're right, Sue, with you have parents at home and you have ones that work 3 and 4 jobs. But I will say there are a lot of nonprofits, including the Junior League of Boca Raton, that got in contact with me and asked for all the Title I schools in Delray and Boca, and then they're going to keep going further north. And all the teacher had to do was do a page application, and they donated 100 books. Obviously, they had to be approved and all that to each classroom. So there are a lot of charities that maybe we need to look at to help those schools and those students that whatever they're lacking or need, or the classroom needs, or the teacher needs. We're very lucky in Palm Beach County. We have a lot of charities that help our school district, and I don't think we'd be able to do it without them, just because we're so big. So maybe that's one thing we need to look at. But there are a lot of charities that help Title I schools, low income schools. I know the Boca schools donate and help Boca elementary schools because that's a lower income population. So there are a lot of things out there happening and a lot of people helping, but maybe we need to identify more, have the schools let the principal know and then let us know. But there are a lot of people out there that donate and give a lot of help to lower income families. Thank you.
Isn't that lovely, Miss Branch? So the purpose of our conversation is to try to determine what barriers exist inside the school system and its policies and processes that prevent the best teachers from being with the neediest students. And so we're not talking about whether or not charity is a solution for injustice. We know it's not. Okay, so it's all lovely that people want to put their charitable resources at play to try to help them get in heaven because of the centuries of lack of access for certain groups. But that's not what we're talking about here, right? And so I want to go back and say, I think if we can figure out, maybe we'll do a sampling from the scatter plot, right? But at the end of the day, we still trying to get to the systemic stuff, the institutional things, right? Um, the that we've talked about before in terms of like burnout and and the need for additional supports, whether they're BHPs or social workers, whatever, like, that's added bonus. But just, because we're going everywhere, and yes, I always go down these data rabbit holes, so I'm sorry for taking y'all there. If we can maybe look at the scatter plot and see which schools, and then, but we still have to answer the question in terms of how did the teacher get there? Did they apply? Were they U at it? Were they placed? And so maybe we sample from both ends of the spectrum, right? Those with lowest performance, lowest growth,
Yeah.
and maybe then but we still have to get it to the teacher. So if we choose a school, and then maybe we could get the principal supervisors to look at the teachers in those schools to answer our questions. I don't know. I'm trying to figure out how to simplify it,
That would,
but stay focused on the questions we're trying to answer.
I think that that's makes sense, right? Maybe picking one or I would think three schools, maybe one in the lowest, one in the top, and one in the middle, or we could even do two, and then comparing.
Maybe four. How about one in each quadrant?
I think that that's a great one. So it'll give us a good picture.
yeah, I think that's a really good place to start.
Yeah.
And then in just a moment, Gloria, I think, yeah, if we could pick one, maybe two in each quadrant, and especially, I'm especially interested in the red and the green, because I think that's probably not true. I shouldn't make assumptions about what the schools are in the above the line, but and I think the first, if we could first get the school level data for just a handful of schools, just that, like, for what percentage of teachers at that school, applied, what percentage were placed, blah blah blah. And actually, we could even do it down to just like certain grade levels if we want, or certain subjects, whatever, to make it a little bit more.
Yeah, I think we should stick to the fourth grade.
Fourth grade ELA maybe, and
Yeah.
and so then that would be hopefully then a piece of data that we could actually get, and then I think, and then we go from there, because if we see real differences in those numbers between the schools, then we know that's a place to drill down to the teacher level. If we don't see many differences percentage wise between those schools, then correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that means that we need to look at something else.
And I think Ms. Branch has re-raised her hand.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
That's all right. Yes. Dr. Robinson's been talking about this for how long, Dr. Robinson? A long time. And she with data, just like my dad is big on data, but every child does learn differently. And I would say over the years since Dr. Robinson's been talking about this, I think the test scores are up, the graduation rate's up. So we're obviously doing something right, but obviously there is always room for improvement and help and to figure out. And when you take one school, like you said, what may work for one school and one teacher may not work for someone else. But so far, I think the school district's done a great job of we're raising the graduation rate and the test scores. Doesn't mean everybody can read, write, and count, but I think we've done a great job. I think Dr. Robinson, well, you even said, I don't remember what, maybe it was the last call when Mr. Oswald gave some data on test scores.
Yeah, and that's lovely. And so then, but as you know, Ms. Branch, when the Coalition for Black Student Achievement presented its report card on the Palm Beach County School District, there's still some stark disparities. And so what I'm talking about now is trying to get to the structural and systemic things involving the teacher. We say that the teacher is the most important single person that gets paid, right, in terms of the child's education. And so that's what we're trying to look at. There's a lot of things I think one of the things, and I'm gonna just throw it out there since I'm rambling, that happened, And it actually happened under my watch. I didn't understand the significance of it. There was a point in time when teachers would be hired by the school district, and the district would tell them what school you're going to. Okay, that changed, and so now they're hired by the school. So tell me, Mr. Oswald, if I'm wrong, because my recollection could be flawed. But so there's things inside the way business is conducted that I think either contributes to or does not alleviate the disparities. And I still believe that it's important to address these disparities because at the end of the day, we should be, quote, developing all human capital so that everybody can be a productive citizen so that they can pay into Social Security so I can be really retired.
Exactly. Somebody else just said the same thing you just said about paying into Social Security.
Right. Right, but we don't. But we're happy with the A-rated school system, and so that's why I want to look at this particular issue, and it is complex. So we're trying to simplify it. We got 10 minutes left, so we said we're going to choose one or two in each quadrant.
Yeah, I think so. And then, so let's see if we can get this done in the next 10 minutes so that, hopefully that data would be something that is manageable and then we can have going forward. And then I say, and then let's make it clear what we want, the data we want on each of those schools. I would think in a way what the schools we'd want to choose would be the outliers, like the ones to the far right of the green, the ones to the far left.
Just name them, please. Let's
Okay,
let's
let's
land
just
it.
say, okay, so how about like Lincoln Elementary is the far right?
In the green.
In the green, Lincoln and Rosenwald. And then the far left on the red is Roosevelt Elementary.
On some of these, I do want to have a conversation with Mr. Houchins because your data set's going to be pretty small, a Rosenwald and a Roosevelt. So one kid can count like 2 points, 3 points. So it's going to be skewed by the numbers.
Say that again. What? I'm sorry. What?
So I'd rather
explain it more.
I'd rather have a conversation with Mr. Houchins because what you're talking about, because the denominator in some of the schools that you're mentioning are so small that a single kid, if I got 100 kids in fourth grade, right, each kid is essentially counts as one, right? Versus if I've got, 25 kids in fourth grade or 50 kids are going to count as two. If it's
okay. And those are just smaller schools, is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So versus on the other side, if you've got a very large large population, the numbers are going to, each kid's going to be a lower percentage. So I think we got to try to compare apples to apples.
Yeah. Okay. So would the committee be fine? Would the committee be okay with Mr. Oswald choosing the schools under the after looking at the size and all that, and with the clarification that basically we want kind of the outliers.
And remember, in choosing, I got to see what we can pull too, because Paul gave you some information where I don't know what I can pull by teacher because it could be teacher identifiable, which could cause other issues. Especially like at a Roosevelt or Rosenwald, you're going to be able to identify a teacher immediately. So, which is, you can't do that. So I got to have a conversation to try to get to what we discussed and what can be pulled.
And, so quick question for the committee. And for Keith, I guess. Does it make it easier if we just say the school as a whole as opposed to just fourth grade when we're looking at these,
Depends on the denominator. Depends on the denominator.
I'm sorry, what?
Depends on the denominator.
Well, I think that could help us go into like picking each school, right? We want one school in each quadrant. So I would suggest we pick schools with similar population sizes so that we could avoid some of that
Based on what
skew.
you're saying, you want more around each quadrant that are Title One, right? Because that's what you're trying to find outliers.
No, no, not necessarily, because that's you're not getting the comparative data that you need.
Mhm.
If you pick all Title One schools, that's just we're basically repeating the obvious, in my opinion.
Yeah.
We're going to
Yeah,
find stats
agreed.
that's going to echo things that we probably already know. But if we target if we select a sample of a different or schools that are not Title One,
So
and we
essentially,
want
you
to look
want
at
you.
why.
So to that point, essentially, you want each quadrant, but that, but the data set should be only for originally scored like level one or level two kids, and where do they end up in a year?
Well, I don't think necessarily at this point. I think at this point, I would just really be interested to know on a school level, because well, on a school level, some of that data about how the teachers got there and how many years of experience, all that on a school level for the schools in the different quadrants. I think that will tell us a lot of where to go from here. Because I don't want to drill down that deep on something that we're not sure is really going to be a relevant data point. And I'd like to have data that we could actually, that's doable. So, I mean, I would suggest we choose, I'd prefer two from each quadrant, or at least two from the bottom half, and, but two from each quadrant, and just get that school level data of, um, teachers' years of experience, national board certification, re-endorsement, that stuff that we were asking about for teachers, basically at a school level. And I think that's a good first step. And then I'm hoping that that will then show us things that seem to have an effect on which quadrant that school ended up in.
So just so that I understand, so what I'm thinking, our next step would be to pick those four schools, right? And similar population size, one in each quadrant or two in each quadrant, however many. But we have to make sure that the population sizes are similar within the schools so that the data isn't skewed. And then I guess Mr. Oswald could ask to see if that like data by school is able to be presented to us.
Yeah, all that. Yeah, I'm not making any promises. I'm gonna see what I can get, just so that.
Am I following? I just wanted to make sure. Is that correct, Sue?
Yes, yes. And I guess only question, since we have 3 minutes,
Actually, like one,
is,
because I gotta sign off, sign back in, and just switch
yeah,
over here.
okay.
So,
The only question is, do we want to let Mr. Oswald choose the schools after speaking with Ms. Dr. Hutchins, whatever his name is, I'm sorry, and or do we want to figure uh, do this by email?
Dr. Robinson, what do
Okay,
you think?
thank you. So I'm I'm trying to simplify this. So what I want to find out, Mr. Oswald, is ask them if they still can easily pull the data like they did with the $10,000 teachers, so that they can actually rank teachers by PYG. And I think we're looking at, so we said fourth grade. I don't know how we landed on fourth grade, but now with the PM one, two, and three, I would propose that we look at third grade ELA between PM one and PM three. But I might have all my data messed up. But the question, Mr. Oswald, is to find out how hard it is for them to, without giving us identifying information, but do they still pull PYG by teacher? Because they did for multiple years. And then have the ability to sort that by the students' demographic data. So we could see which teachers have the highest PYG for third grade reading for ESE students, for example. And then when we see those high performers, we look at them as opposed to starting by the school.
All right, I will
I don't
find out.
know.
I got to switch
I don't
over.
know if
So
that's the
there's,
way, and I don't know how hard that is.
okay,
Okay.
Taisha, Ms. Hicks and I need to switch
Well,
over and let other students in, so I will look into that. So I need to exit. and adjourn.
Okay. To be continued.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Much appreciated. See you in a little bit.